Hi there girls. This week's topic is all about sugar and how it affects your body now that we're 40 plus. Now sugar is step one in the 10-step guide that I produced for healthy eating for the 40 plus woman, and it's step one for a good reason, because most people that go on a diet, anyone that goes to a slimming club or wants to cut back or wants to trim up, first thing they do is cut out all of the sugar, added sugar that they have in their diet. So things like added sugar to tea and coffee, sugary drinks, cakes and biscuits, chocolates, sweeties, anything like that, they cut out straight away. So step one usually is quite an easy one, but it does also need some explanation and a bit of science behind it. Sometimes a little bit of knowledge really makes you more motivated to actually achieve cutting it out completely. Now, when I think about the 40 plus woman diet that we've put together, this plan that I put together, just try to think of it like in cavemen or cavewoman times. I mean, in cavewoman times, did they have sugar? Probably not. And the only sugar they probably had was fructose, and that would be from the natural fruits that they might have found in the vegetation, and berries and fruits and things like that. They wouldn't have had cane sugar because it wouldn't have been produced at that time. So always think about it like that, so you're having vegetables and meat, and that's protein and vegetables basically. Again, they didn't have lots of starchy carbs. They may have had potatoes, but not really rice and pasta and bread and things like that. So sugar, number one, is the one thing that they wouldn't probably have had. So always think of it like that when you're eating anything. So let's have a look at the facts. Firstly, sugar can be as addictive as heroin. It's been scientifically proven that people do get addicted to sugar. So the more sugar you have, the more you want, more and more. So this really goes back to things like eating breakfast cereal. So for instance, if you were to eat this kind of breakfast cereal, you might find that when you eat it, you feel okay, but then very quickly afterwards, you want more of it. And this is because your blood sugars are affected when you eat something sugary, and more so now that we're over 40, because our hormones have become all a bit jingle jangled. So I'm going to go through the different hormones that really are affected by eating sugar and too much of it. And it's a big thing now that eating a lot less processed food is so much better for your health in general. And you know, we always talk about health first, side effect being weight loss, but of course this one can make a massive difference if you do want to lose weight. So firstly, the insulin issue, which is just what I've just been talking about. Insulin is the hormone that controls your blood sugar, and when you eat something sugary, your blood sugars shoot up, and then insulin comes along to pull them back down again. Now, if it does that too many times, it's just going to get worn out and it won't want to work anymore. And then you could have the risk, run the risk of becoming diabetic, actually diabetic. So insulin is number one reason really to stop eating that sugar. Number two, it can make all the cells inflamed. So what this means is that we don't want to inflame cells because they lead to disease, cancer, all sorts of nasty diseases that we don't want. So inflammation is the last thing we want in our bodies if possible. And sugar can really stimulate inflammation in the body, especially too much of it. It just can't get rid of it quick enough, and then it inflames the cells, and that isn't a good thing at all. Number three, it hires your cortisol. Now, cortisol is your stress hormone. Now, this can be already elevated because we're now over 40, because the insulin, progesterone are all very upside down, or maybe gone away completely if you're postmenopausal. Your cortisol your adrenals have to make those hormones now. It's like a little side factory. It has to do that now. But that also makes cortisol, and so it can stimulate and kick out too much cortisol anyway. So eating sugar only stimulates this further. So then you're going to gain that weight around the middle. We've talked about that many times, how cortisol affects your weight gain around the middle. It's all about the fight and flight syndrome. Number three is the ghrelin. Now, the ghrelin is the hormone. I always get this mixed up. I think it's a hormone that tells you that you are hungry. So ghrelin is a hungry hormone. It overloads it, so it actually makes you want to eat even more. So it stimulates that hormone to want more and more and more, and you don't kind of have a cut-off button, which is leptin. Leptin is your cut-off button. It tells you that you're full, you've had enough, that's it, don't eat anymore. But leptin again can get very disrupted. It gets very sluggish when you eat far too much sugar. Again, something we really don't want when we want to lose weight. It can also lower progesterone. Now, progesterone is the hormone that makes us calm. And again, this can be affected during menopause and beyond. So this is really important that we keep the progesterone levels high as possible. So if sugar is the one that's going to erode it, we definitely don't want that either. Now, there was a very interesting program on last week on the TV about stress and how it affects our hormones as well. And actually, on that program, it did say that when you're stressed, so when there's more cortisol in the body, your flavour sensors in your mouth take sugar differently. So if you're calm, your sugary drinks and biscuits and things will taste different to when you're stressed. In fact, when you're stressed, it doesn't affect you as much. So sometimes you have sugar and you really taste it in your mouth, don't you? Really feel the intensity of it. And that goes away when you're stressed. So again, it makes you have more and more and more of it. So just be aware of that. So what do we do? How can we stop? Now, there's a few ways of doing that. You could go complete cold turkey, just stop completely. Tomorrow, say to yourself, I'm not having any sugar, any added sugars at all. We'll talk about hidden sugars in a moment, and you could just stop like that. But some people do like to have the stepwise approach where you're taking it gently down so that you're not over stressing the body by not having the sugar, because that can actually stress the body and you can actually have withdrawal symptoms. And I've heard of that it's like a sugar hangover. You kind of get a headache, feel a bit fatigued because you're just not having that sugar. So that's one indication that it is actually addictive. You could start with a vegetable-based breakfast. Now, I know that sounds a bit weird, but if you have something like avocado, eggs, scrambled eggs and avocado, maybe smoked salmon, that's a perfect way to start a sugar-free breakfast instead of having cereals like this or high levels of fruit, because that also is sugary. Now, these words can be found on ingredient lists as well. So things like sucrose, malt syrup, aspartame, honey, fructose, glucose, corn syrup, they're all still sugar. And what kind of annoys me about people that are writing books that are sugar-free recipe books, for instance, Davina's got one sugar-free recipe book, but she's still doing cakes and biscuits. And let's face it, cakes and biscuits, even if you've got honey in them, they're going to have that effect of sugar for us. And when you're over 40, you're more likely to crave it for all of these reasons. So it's more important that we try and get off it as much as possible. Another way you could completely get away from it, just notice the triggers and mindfully tell yourself you're not going to have any. So if you find that you're craving sugar in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, a lot of people do, a cup of tea, a biscuit, then just try to say to yourself, well, do I need that biscuit? Is that my trigger? Or maybe not have the cup of tea, have something different at that point. So there's some ideas. Now let's have a quick look at some hidden sugars now. Like I say, there's lots of things that are written on the back of packets. Now if there is any ingredients on the back of packet, it is a processed food. And again, we're trying to get away from those because they put sugar in them to preserve it. And preservatives, obviously, it's to make the food lasts longer, and they're hidden in many ways. Now I haven't got much stuff in my cupboards to show you, but I am going to show you how to read the labels of these sugar things. So this is a box of biscuits, obviously my son's, not mine, and the food label on the back here, I don't know if you can see it. You can't. I'll zoom out, I'll tell you what's in it. So what you need to look at is down the list, this always says carbohydrates, and then it will say after that of which are sugars. Now this has got a red line showing you that it's high in sugar, and if you look at the 100-gram line, that will give you the percentage of sugar within that product. So that percentage is 35% sugar in that product. So that is a very high sugary product. Remember, we don't really need sugar in our lives at all. Our bodies are not evolving quick enough to need that sugar, especially from artificial sources. We could do with, yes, fruits or sugars, but not artificial ones. Now, also here is the breakfast cereal I've just been showing you, the crispy minis, Weetabix. Now, it says here, all lovely and fresh, high fibre, whole grain and low salt. Yes, all lovely. That's all